Excellent. Okay. I was laughing because my camera fell, my technology stopped, and those are just barriers to be able to hang out with you guys, to be able um to be able to share content with you, right? So let me get this Instagram fixed here. Let's try again. All right. So sorry, Instagram world. Let's try again. Last time my camera fell down. Okay, I think we're okay. So technology is fun. Okay. I think we're good. I think we're good. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Dr. Lisa Palmer, Dr. Mama Bear. Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Tonight's topic is blues, bleeding, and babesia. Blues, bleeding, and babesia. So you can let me know. A lot of patients were letting me know that the end of last week they felt a little sad. They felt a little sad. There was a huge full moon on Friday. And so another word for moon is lunar. And the derivation of lunar is lunatic. So let me know if you can hear me okay. So Robin, let me know if you and Jonathan can hear me. Hey, Terry, I see that you can see me, but you can't hear me. So let me know that that mic is working or this mic is working. Emily says, blame it on Mercury retrograde. Yeah, I hear you. So Dr. Chris can hear me. That's awesome. Instagram feed is working. Christina says she can hear me or she's in Ohio. So Robin can hear me. That's awesome. So Terry, try turning up your sound. See if you can hear me. Yay. Thank you for letting me know. You guys can get me on Facebook and hear me on Facebook all the way from Ohio. But yeah, so lots of people the end of last week felt sad, right? Felt sad for no reason. So the derivation of lunar, lunatic comes from lunar, luna in Spanish, and in Latin is moon. And so people go crazy around the moon, right? Around full moons. Why is that? My dad at one point had collapsed. He fainted. And so we took him to the emergency room, and it just happened that it was a full moon night. And I asked the ER nurse, I said, hey, do you guys see an increase in cases? Do you guys see an increase in ER visits around the full moon? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. We all say to each other, is it a full moon? Yep, it's a full moon. I have patients that work in fire department, and they say absolutely increase craziness, if you will, with the full moon. And so one of the things that we see in practice is that we see that because a full moon can have an effect on tides, can have an effect on our environment, it also can affect something that's really filled with water, has a high water percentage, which are parasites. And so we see that parasitic activity can be increased. Well, what does that mean? Well, if the parasites are in your digestive tract, it may mean that you feel nauseous. If the parasites are negatively affecting your digestion, it may mean diarrhea. It may mean vomiting. If they are in your system and they're more active, they may cause insomnia. If they're in your upper GI tract, and I've had patients throw up parasites, vomit parasites. I've seen animals vomit parasites, which is pretty disgusting. You may grind your teeth at night. You may have kids that have nightmares. Mom may have a bad dream, right? Could be parasites, could be parasitic. There are parasites that eat the neurotransmitters in your brain. They eat the neurotransmitters that make you feel good. And so you may feel sad. So that could be the blues, right? That could be why you feel sad, or you feel emotional, or you feel irritable, or you feel aggressive. We had a case with a little boy came in. I think he was 2 at the time. And I thought the little boy had bad behavior because he was hitting his mom, like punching his mom and biting her. And I'm thinking, man, like, what is wrong with this kid? Like, get your kid under control. And it wasn't because she was a bad parent or he was a bad kid. It was that this kid, when we did the quantum testing on him, we found he had high levels of parasitic activity. We worked with the mom and we worked with the child, and now the child comes in, he's sweet as pie. What was bad behavior or a bad kid really was a parasitic infestation. And so if you've ever heard of ants in your pants, right? So you can't sit still because you got ants in your pants. Some of those old sayings are true. I had a case that I worked on this weekend with a gentleman that couldn't hear, right? And so there's a saying that says, a bug in your ear. What did I find in his ear? He had hearing loss. I found a parasitic activity in his ear. Oh my goodness, right? And he's like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense because sometimes I feel things crawling in my ear. So a bug in your ear, ants in your pants, that all could be parasitic. Hi Amanda, hi Christina, hi Anna, hi Christina. Schizophrenia. Schizophrenia could be, some psychiatric disorders could be due to parasites, right? One minute they're fine, and the next minute they're talking to something that's not there. I had a patient out of Latin America. When she was younger, she felt crawling in her brain, and it seems that my Latin American colleagues that are physicians are trained in parasitology. They're trained in parasites. And so their treatment for this young lady was they cut open her cranium, they cut open her skull, and they pulled out parasites from her brain when she was younger. And so when she came to the United States and she came to Florida, she started feeling that crawling again. And she went to many physicians before me and they thought she was crazy. She wasn't crazy, just they'd never had heard of that. So unfortunately, there's some practitioners that if you say something and they've never heard of it before, instead of researching it more, instead of learning more, instead of taking more seminars, they don't understand it. So they just think it's all in your head and that you're crazy. I think that's a horrible thing to tell people, right? And so instead, what we did is we did the nutrition testing on her. We found a parasitic frequency in her brain. I did not tell her she needed her cranium cut open because that's what she was afraid of. Instead, we used herbs and homeopathy to rebalance out her body, and her body detoxed out the parasites, and she did great. And at a certain point in her case, she's like, Dr. Palmer, I don't feel things crawling around my brain anymore. Could you imagine having that sensation of something crawling in your cranium, crawling in your skull, crawling on your brain? Like, that has to be horrible. That has to be awful. Hey, Carrie. Carrie went into labor with her firstborn on a full moon. Yep. And so docs will also tell you, and midwives and OBGYNs will tell you, yeah, more babies are born around a full moon. So if we have a mama who's due around that time, I'm like, yeah, full moon, probably the baby will decide to show up. Super, super interesting. I used to think that learning about planets and learning about the moon and I was actually in an astronomy class at the University of Florida as a freshman. Back in the day, you had to like dial in and try to like get your classes like that. It makes us sound super old. And you had to do, I had to run a phone line. I had to run a phone line into my phone jack in my dorm room to get internet. And then you had like that horrible, like, the connection of the dial-up internet. And I remember trying to get classes on the phone because they didn't have online class sign up yet, which makes me sound really ancient. This was in the 90s, and I couldn't get any classes. So then I just started randomly putting codes in because I was like, what happens if you don't have classes as a freshman? And I ended up in an astronomy class. Yeah, man, it's totally a horrible sound, right? And then we had AOL. You've got mail. Some of you guys still have AOL accounts. I see your email addresses and I see the AOL, and I'm like, really? And does it still, those of you that have AOL, does it say, you've got mail? So tell me if it does. And so I ended up in an astronomy class. And so at the time, my major was sports medicine, right? I had started learning about sports medicine in high school, and I started working with athletes in high school and being on sidelines in high school. And so I did not want to be in an astronomy class. I wanted to be in sports medicine classes. And so astronomy to me was stupid. I was like, I'm in sports medicine. I'm going to work with athletes. I'm going to work with professional athletes. I'm going to work with Olympic athletes. I'm on scholarship here at the University of Florida to work with the football team. Why do I need astronomy? Like, this is stupid, right? But I wanted to be a good freshman. So I showed up to the freshman astronomy class, and I'm sitting in there and I'm like, this is dumb. Why do we need to know about the moon? Like, why do we need to know about planets? Like, what a very bad viewpoint that I had back then. What a very limited viewpoint that I had, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. But I look back at that, I'm like, well, maybe I should have said and stayed in the astronomy class, so then I can understand new moons and full moons and moons going into retrograde and moons that are waxing and waning and all that stuff. Hey, Jessica. Hi, Alyssa. Yeah, Alyssa, the dial-up sound was pretty horrible. It was pretty horrible. And then, of course, if you try to call someone who was using their phone line for dial-up, which was the only way, it was always busy, right? So someone's on the internet, good luck. Good luck trying to get a hold of them. Or if you didn't want to talk to someone, you can always take your phone off the hook too, if you guys remember that. And so you could feel sad. You could feel sad around last Friday's full moon. And if you did, you might have parasites. You might have parasites. And so through quantum nutrition testing, which was what we do at our office, and some of my awesome students that are all over the US and some internationally can help you figure out if parasites are a problem, right? And that way, there is always a cause to the symptom. There's a cause. We look for the cause. And so, women, I didn't even realize that female cycles could be near full moons and female cycles could be around full moons and new moons. I didn't realize that, right? Until one of my colleagues was like, oh, yeah, if your menstruation cycle, also a cycle, right, should be paired with new moons and full moons. I'm like, what? Really? That's really interesting. And so with a female cycle, if you are in childbearing years and you are menstruating, you are shedding the uterine wall. So try not to be graphic, but just be real, right? So you're bleeding, you're shedding the uterine wall. It is a cleansing action. It is a reset action. It is shedding of the old and gaining of the new action, right? And so, in order to do that, females, you will have menses, you will have menstruation occur, right? Bleeding occur. And it is a healthy female function. You're supposed to have that. So if you take birth control or you have an IUD or you're doing those methods of birth control, it is not normal to not have a period. You are supposed to have a period. It is a cycle. And so perhaps a female in her early 20s or earlier will get put on birth control for various different reasons, everything from acne to cramps to the obvious use to whatever. And then I meet that same female in her 30s, and now she wants to have a kid, and she can't because her physician never told her that birth control side effect is infertility. And that the bleeding that you have when you're on birth control is not a period, but a breakthrough bleed. And so the bleeding, you're supposed to have bleeding. Now, you're not supposed to have bleeding with chunks in it. And so because the vagina can detox too, sometimes the chunks, and again, not to be graphic, but just to be real, those chunks can be parasites, ladies. You can have, the body can get rid of parasitic activity out of the vagina. So the first time I learned about that, I was actually teaching and I was on stage. And my assistant at the time, in front of 40-ish students, said, Dr. Palmer, would you test me? And I said, yeah, of course. And I said, okay, well, do you mind sharing with the class what's going on? I had no heads up, right? No heads up. And she goes, yeah, I feel like something's biting my vagina. And I was like, come again? Like, what? So I think at that time I had parasite cases in the brain and in the ear and in the eye and in the digestive tract, but I had never had a vaginal parasite case. And so my very first introduction to the world of vaginal parasites was this assistant that I had at the time in front of a live class. And I was like, okay, so you feel like you have parasites, you have bugs biting your vagina. And she said yes. And she was very robust, I guess, in explaining to everybody and going into graphic detail what it felt like to have something biting her vagina, like a bug biting her vagina. And part of me was horrified because that just sounds like awful torture. And the other part of me, I guess the doctor brain of mine, was very interested in what the heck was happening. And so with the testing I was doing at the time, we did find it was an immune challenge, and we did find it was parasitic. And that assistant I had for a bit of time, we were able to help her with her not itchy vagina, but her sensation of being bit. Can you imagine that? And so a little bit later in practice, I had a case where a child felt like things were crawling in her vagina. I think she was 12 years old or 13 years old, and her mom was horrified. Because, I mean, can you imagine your child coming up to you and saying, Mommy, I feel like there's bugs in my vagina? Like, that's horrible. But it's very, very common. Pinworms in daycare, very, very common, right? So little Johnny's playing in the sand, cat poops in there, you get pinworm. Little Johnny has an itchy butt, is in daycare, scratches his butt. There's parasitic pinworms around his anal opening. He touches the blocks. Little Jill, chews on the blocks. She now transferred pinworm eggs into her mouth. Some of you guys are like disgusted right now. She's got an itchy butt. She scratches her butt and, touches whatever. And then pinworms just like spread throughout the whole daycare. And daycares are really good talking about lice, but daycares are really not good talking about pinworms. I have never heard of a daycare talking about pinworms. And so the pinworm eggs will get in that kid's bed. Mom cleans the bed sheets, inhales the pinworms. Now she has pinworms. Or she's, doing laundry, grabs the sheets, goes and makes lunch, doesn't wash her hands, and eats. The family eats, and now they have pinworms. And pinworms can actually crawl from the butt into the vagina and cause endometriosis, can cause infertility, can lead to future issues in female stuff, right? So bleeding, if you are childbearing age, you should have a period. It is a normal function to have a period. Premenstrual syndrome is not normal. Premenstrual syndrome means you have bloating, you have tender breasts, you have cramping, you have clots, you have irregular periods. PMS is not normal. PMS is common. So you see the difference, right? So you should have bleeding, but it shouldn't be for 2 weeks. It shouldn't be like creatures coming out your vagina. It shouldn't be irregular. You shouldn't have cramps. You shouldn't have bloating. You shouldn't turn into this emotional monster. You shouldn't have swollen breasts. You shouldn't have any of that. All that you should have with a normal female cycle is bleeding without chunks in it, not to be gross, just to be real, without chunks in it, and then it stops. And then your body starts to regrow the endometrium in preparation for pregnancy. That is a female cycle. So then there's another B that I'm talking about tonight is Babesia, right? So Babesia is been pinned down. We're talking about pinworms pinned down. Babesia can be a spinoff of Lyme, right? So when you hear someone saying Lyme or Lyme's disease, it's Lyme disease, they may mention Babesia. So what the heck happened with Babesia, and what the heck happened from Lyme, and how do you get Lyme, right? So you can have chronic fatigue with Lyme. You can have autoimmune issues with Lyme. You could have a lower immune system with Lyme. You could have, sometimes Lyme can get into the joints and make you have like really creaky, achy, awful joints. You could have brain fog with Lyme, right? So where does Lyme come from? Traditionally, Lyme comes from tick, not bite, stings. So ticks sting you. They don't bite you if you want to be technical. And then the classic Lyme is a bullseye rash, right? The problem is it's not just Lyme. The problem, or it's not just ticks. The problem is that we're now seeing cases not just in the Northeast. We're seeing cases all the way down the East Coast, in the Midwest, in the West, all over the world. So Lyme used to be a Northeast thing, a Northern America thing. And Lyme, unfortunately, is a everywhere thing. And Lyme in the past was only ticks, but now people that have never been bit by a tick are showing for Lyme. So perhaps other insects are a vector for Lyme. It could be mosquitoes. It could be ants. It could be spiders. It could be whatever. Babesia is a problem. So in the past, if a Lyme case came into the office, I was like, oh no, a Lyme case. Who do I know who wants this Lyme case? Because Lyme cases in the past were a nightmare. Not because they didn't want to help the patient, but because the Lyme, it was just complicated. So Lyme cases in the past before quantum nutrition testing were like long lists of supplements, chasing symptoms, repairing the gut, because oftentimes a Lyme case will come in on multiple rounds of antibiotics. And by the time they get to our office, which a lot of times we're their last hope, and I don't want to be their last hope, their gut is destroyed. So we have to repair the gut. And then we have to handle the cause of the Lyme. And then we have to see what else is going on, right? And so in the past, I did not want Lyme cases. I'd be like, all right, well, who can we send this to? Like, who could we refer this out to? Now, with the technology we have with quantum nutrition testing and the technology we have with products like Cellcore, Lyme is not a hard case anymore. Lyme is not a, oh my gosh, let's refer this out anymore. Lyme is not a death sentence anymore, right? Or a sentence of a disability. Lyme has a cause. Everything has a cause. Whether you're sad, whether you have horrible periods, whether you have autoimmune, every single thing has a cause. And when we find the cause through quantum nutrition testing, which is a holistic way of looking at what the heck caused the body to be imbalanced, figuring out how to rebalance the body with whole food supplements, with homeopathy, with herbs, with carbon technology, which is the Cellcore line, rebalance the body heals itself. I was talking to a colleague earlier today, and I'm like, it's kind of a, I don't even know what the right word is. Maybe you guys can help me. It's kind of like a sin to bypass God's design, right? So if you believe that the body is a temple, if you believe, and not to get like down a religion rabbit hole, but if you believe we're created in the image of our creator, you know, whatever your faith is, and then if we were created to heal, then is it a sin to bypass that, to do exploratory surgery, to cut out organs that are there for a purpose, to cut out glands, to be so cocky, if you will, is probably a nicer word, to be so confident and cocky that you believe that cutting out an organ in a gland is going to function better without the organ in a gland, or that a man-made medication is going to be a better solution than getting the body's ability to heal itself, free of interference, free of toxins. Now, that is the biggest thing that we're up against is toxins, right? Where are these toxins coming from? You know, they're man-made chemicals in our air. There are man-made chemicals in our water supply. If you go to www.ewg.com, or excuse me, ewg.org, you can look up your zip code. You go under the tap water section, you can look up your zip code and you can be horrified by all of the contaminants in your water supply. And I'm sorry, a carbon filter is not going to remove that. Reverse osmosis is not going to remove all of that. Distillation will remove a lot of it, not all of it either. Distillation is probably the purest that we can do, but it's still not pure water, right? Hey, Becky. Liz says spiritual bypass. Yeah, arrogant. Arrogant's a great word, Liz. You're really good at coming up with perfect words to describe. Good job. And so look to see what's in your water supply, right? And so recently I've been seeing a lot of radioactive metals like uranium and germanium and plutonium that come from our Earth's crust. How do they get in our water supply? Well, some of you that have basements, to dig the basement, you upset the Earth's crust and that gets into the water supply. Those of you with high construction zones, so Florida has a lot of construction happening now. I remember at my old house was near a spring, and they decided to put this huge apartment complex, and they're going to be building houses. And when they started digging for the apartment complex, a sinkhole developed at this park. And I remember looking into the sinkhole, and if I were to guess, the sinkhole must have gone down like 30 feet. And the really scary part of the sinkhole is that the sinkhole wasn't like next to the lake. It wasn't next to the river. It wasn't next to like the middle of nowhere, the forest. The sinkhole was right next to actually part of the athletic field. So I'm like, oh my goodness, like, what if you were playing soccer or what if you were playing football and you were running on this field and this sinkhole opened up? Like, you'd be 20 feet down. Like, I'm hoping that that thing grew over time. It wasn't just like, la 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 la, I'm having a bad day, and the earth eats you, right? Like 20 feet down the sinkhole. And so I remember when they roped it off, they had police tape, police caution tape, and cones. And I'm like, and I looked down this thing. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like a kid could fall in there, a dog could fall, a cat could fall in there, like a person could fall in there, really? Like cones and police tape. And then I think someone realized like this is a huge liability. And they put like fencing, like high fencing all around it. And to this day, last time I was at that park, till this day, that sinkhole is still there. So I actually want to go and see how deep it is now. The construction process on the land next to it, not at the park, but the land maybe a half a mile away, the disturbance in just digging for that apartment complex irritated the earth, and the sinkhole developed, and it was crazy. And so when the sinkhole developed, the earth's crusts, heavy metals were exposed into our atmosphere, into our water supply. It like shook up everything, right? And so you may find uranium, germanium, plutonium, arsenic, cadmium, whatever metals in your water supply because the Earth's crust is being altered. Because the Earth's crust was already altered. At one point, I think it was the Army. The Army was launching bombs in the Ocala National Forest, and I'm not really sure why. And so when they were doing that, a lot of my patients were testing for radioactive metals. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And then someone's like, oh yeah, Ocala is not that far away, maybe an hour and a half. They're setting off bombs in the forest. I'm like, why are we setting off bombs in the forest? Like, what is the purpose of this? And so that's one of the reasons why you can get radioactive metals. So the chemicals in the air, the metals in the air, the chemicals in our water supply, the metals in our food, these toxins get into our system. They open the doors to the bugs, right? So this is what allows parasites to breach. It's almost like opening up your front door or opening up a window or breaching security is the toxins allow these pathogens access, right? Heavy metals open up the blood-brain barrier. You have a barrier in your brain that's supposed to protect your brain from parasites, from bacteria, from chemicals, from metals. Heavy metals will open up that blood-brain barrier and allow these bugs to come in. So the earlier case I was telling you about with the lady with the bugs, the parasites in her brain, that's how that happened. Parasites came in because she had a higher toxic load. So we got to handle the toxic load. Every now and then I'll have a patient come to the office and they're like, well, I'm healthy. I have no problems. And I'm like, whoa. Okay, good. I'm glad you feel healthy. But your definition of health and my definition of health are two different things. Health is not how you feel, right? So there's people that felt great. They went for a run and they keeled over dead. They were healthy. They were the common definition of healthy. Oh, well, look at Bob. Bob has good muscles and he's not fat and he runs every morning and his body looks good. So therefore Bob must be healthy. That is not a good, I hit my pair 3. That is not a good definition of health. Definition of health is all of your organs and all of your glands. So if you're missing your gallbladder, you never could be 100% healthy again. If you're missing half your thyroid, you never could be 100% healthy again because you're not 100% yourself. If your female organs got ripped out because you don't need to have any more babies or because you had bad periods, you don't have ovaries anymore, you don't have a uterus anymore, you don't have fallopian tubes anymore. Oh, by the way, those are not ornaments or decorations. When you get your uterus ripped out of you, you didn't lose your uterus, by the way. You didn't misplace your uterus. Someone cut it out of you. Your bladder will not, your pelvic organs will not sit well anymore, right? It will change the structure of the bladder. And so then your bladder falls or prolapses because it doesn't have the support structures that it had when you had all your organs. So if you've had a hysterectomy, you will never be 100% healthy again. Does that mean that I'm being mean and I'm being whatever? I'm being calloused? No, I'm just letting you know you are now compromised. You're missing your organs, you're missing your tonsils, you're missing your gallbladder, you're missing your ovaries, you're missing, you're not missing, they were taken, right? And so my definition of health is 100% of your organs and 100% of your glands functioning optimally, right? Optimally means you don't have symptoms. Optimally means you don't have a high toxic load. Optimally means that you're doing things proactively. You're not waiting until your gallbladder is so sludgy that it goes necrotic or dead and they cut it out of you. You're doing things to handle the toxins in the air. You're doing things to handle the toxins in our water supply. You're taking supplementation. I probably have one right here. Yeah. Perfect. You're taking things like this, biotoxin binder. So I'll show you guys biotoxin binder, right? You're taking things like this, which will bind toxins, right? That will help lower or lessen the toxic load. So when a patient says, I don't need to detox, I don't need to do this, I don't need it, I'm like, I don't know what planet you live on, but this planet has pollution in the air, pollution in the water. Our food is all sprayed, whether it is organic or not, right? Organic does not mean no chemicals. Organic means less chemicals. I love to have a garden. Even when I have a garden, my garden still gets sprayed from chemtrails, right? So you could do the best you can, but it's a high toxic load. So we take biotoxin binder and other binders like this that have carbon technology. So the binder can pass the stomach acid. So the binder can get into the cell. So the binder can lessen the toxic load. So therefore your system and like your immune system can function properly. Okay, so I'll answer a couple questions and then I'm out. So let's see. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Jessica. Yes, our water is awful. Our water is not ideal. Becky says, did you get the pure air that I sent your office? Yes, Becky, thank you for that. I saw that and I thought it was for Dr. Dean, so I put it on his desk. So I have not played with it, but thank you so much for thinking of us. Ashley says, should we get our plugs out if we've had our tubes tied? Should we get our plugs out if we've had our tubes tied? Yeah. So if you have your fallopian tubes and you have your ovaries and you have your uterus, you can still get pregnant by having tubes tied. Should you have them untied? That is a good question. I do not know. And this would probably be a good question for Dr. Colin LaGrange. I'm probably going to have a biotoxin binder while I'm hanging out with you guys. Some biotoxin binder does have the fulvic and humic acids in it. There's up close of biotoxin binder. Actually, this is really bad if I do this on camera because I like to chew supplements. And if I chew these, my teeth will be all black. So I guess I'll wait. It also has broccoli sprouts, yucca root, and citric acid. So it does help to bind. It is carbon technology. So sometimes I have patients saying, well, I have a carbon supplement and it's half the price, so I'm just going to take that. I'm like, yeah, because it's half the price and it doesn't have the technology in it that this does, right? So you get what you pay for, right? You can get steak at McDonald's. You can get steak from your grass-fed farmer. They're both called steak, but two very different products. So Ashley, I probably refer that question to Dr. Colin LaGrange. So my friend, he's a naturopath out of South Africa who had an extremely successful fertility clinic because when you have your tubes tied, you will still have the release of eggs, right? They'll still go through that. So if you release an egg, but your tube's tied and the egg cannot go down the fallopian tubes into the uterus, then what happens? I'm assuming that the body will reabsorb the egg or break down the egg, but then your circulatory system has to handle that. So that's a great question, Ashley. I don't know. So tubes tied. What happens with ovulation with that? I don't know. I can see that the body could make cysts because the eggs can back up. Endometriosis, the eggs can actually end up, or you can have bleeding end up into your pelvic cavity. So you got me thinking, Ashley. I don't know. Becky says it's for the fridge, so the filter. Cool. I will check that out, Becky. Thank you. All right, cool. Alyssa says you even chew that. Yeah, I chew biotoxin binder. I chew BCATP, but not some of the more earthy tasting ones. Yeah, I chew biotoxin binder. And I almost did it with you guys and then realized that I will have black teeth and look kind of crazy. So probably not the best. I guess I have my water here. I'm going to just take it. So there you go. Yeah, Ashley, I'll find out for you. Okay, cool. So if you feel sad, we can find the cause. We want to look for the cause and see what the heck is it parasites eating your neurotransmitters? Is it your hormones are off balance? Does not mean that you need more hormones, but means there's a cause. Is it toxins imbalancing your hormones? I was working with a student this weekend. She had mold in her kitchen. We found mold in her kitchen. And so mold will increase estrogen levels, will imbalance female hormones and male hormones, and can cause PMS because the hormones are imbalanced. So do we need to handle mold? If you're bleeding, if you are a female and you have heavy cycles, there's a reason for that. If you have, not to be gross, just to be real, if you got clotty cycles, you got strange little creatures coming out, it could be that you're detoxing parasites out of that area, or it could be that your hormones are also imbalanced and you're releasing like chunks of endometrium, which is not good. Or if you are exhausted, you have to drag yourself out of bed. That is not normal, by the way. You shouldn't have to drag yourself out of bed. You have to drink caffeine to get through your day. Your zest for life is, you lost your zest for life. Maybe you have a Babesia issue, right? And so with quantum nutrition testing, we're looking for the cause. We're not diagnosing you with Lyme. We're not diagnosing you with a thyroid condition. We're not diagnosing you with anemia. We're not diagnosing you with some kind of psychiatric thing. We're not diagnosing you at all. We're looking at what is balanced in your system. We're looking at what's not balanced in your system. Anything that is not balanced, we want to bring that back into balance through good food, through whole food supplements, through herbs, through homeopathy and carbon technology. And if you need our help, right now at the office, we're offering a 135 special. Normally it's $250. And that includes an initial consultation. That includes us actually listening to you and listening to your health concerns. Maybe your hair is falling out. Maybe you have horrible, awful periods. Maybe you are bleeding to death on your cycles, which, by the way, you could hemorrhage so much that you need a blood transfusion because you are literally bleeding to death. We're looking for the cause. We're handling the cause. We put together a program that's personalized for you, and we hold your hand and coach you along the way. All right. So if we can help you, let me know. I'm Dr. Lisa Palmer, Dr. Mama Bear. Thank you guys for joining me. Have an amazing night. Bye.